never be a slave. That word, I hate it. It rests on my tongue like rot.
Peter, how does it feel to get paid for your work?
There are rumors freedom's coming for us all.
Freedom, you know that's all I want.
Chloe, careful. Vrooman would rather sell you across the river to America than let you go free.
Then I'll run.
I've run before. Maybe this time for good.
No! No! Just get her into a boat. No!
Chloe! Chloe, no!
Word of Chloe Cooley's resistance led to Canada's first legislation limiting slavery. After 200 years, slavery was abolished in Canada in 1834.
Hello and welcome to the St. John's Storytelling Circle, a spirit of storytelling on Rogers TV. I'm Randy Crane and I'll be your host for the show today. We have a lineup of experienced storytellers who will entertain you with their memories of Christmas through their stories and recitations. Dave Patton is going to do the first story for us. Dave is a master storyteller. He's been writing and performing recitations for years. He originally from Labrador. He now lives in St. John's with his wife, Kim. Dave?
Thank you, Randy. Well, I'm just wondering if any of our viewers have ever been stuck on an airplane over St. John's, going round and round in circles in a hold on Christmas Eve, unable to land for weather, and had to go back to Halifax or maybe even back to Toronto. It's happened to me, and on at least one occasion, I was the pilot, so that was no fun. But years ago, when I was with Eastern Provincial Airways, I think we got in more often. And I'll tell you, we used to have a secret weapon. And I'll tell you about that now. So, it was the night before Christmas, and St. John's was down. The ceiling was low. It was right on the ground. The winds, they were howling at 65 knots, and ice on the runway was slickered and snapped. The flights were all holding, some here, some there, some over Bell Island, some over Cape Spear. The pilots were watching their fuel gauges drop and thinking Toronto would be their next stop. And that would be bad, because that's where they started. And St. John's was clear at the time they departed. But when they arrived overhead by and by, St. John's had gone down in a blink of an eye. The passengers sat there and went round and round, wishing that they were down there on the ground in the sheds that were done up so cozy and nice, with 2 fours of jockey and coolers of ice. Jig's dinners were ready, bologna was fried, turkeys were waiting with dressing inside, puncheons of scruncheons all drowned in pork fat. Oh my, what a sin to miss out on all that. Now, just by good luck on that dirty old night, the Christmas tour was out doing deliveries, right? Leaving parcels of capelin all gutted and cleaned and the stockings all hung up around the widescreen. He saw all the flights circling around over town and thought, oh my, what a sin if they can't get down. And just like that, he came up with a plan to help all the pilots so they could all land. Meanwhile, on board of Flight 692, the pilots were towny, so they were home too. But they couldn't land either with the weather down flat. Don't say they wasn't both poisoned with that. Well, I was the captain, feeling quite blue, because I had a show at the LSPU. The co-pilot was a friendly young fellow named Hookie, small youngsters home, so feeling quite sooky. In the jump seat sat Brian, who just had to say, well, who put the airport in Torbay anyway? They should move the whole works out in back of Costco. For that's even windier, says I, as you know. Just then I looked out the left window and saw a sight for sore eyes. Boys, I said, law, my old friend the Tur was flying alongside. How are you getting on, Dave? You in need of a guide? And that's what I am, says I. Sure you knows, in about 5 more minutes to Toronto we goes. Oh, I'm not having that, said the Tur. So I suppose that I'll guide you in. I'll just pitch on your nose. But the runway is slippery and covered in ice. Not anymore, Dave. The runway is nice. I had 5,000 cousins fly in from the Cape and poop on the runway to get it in shape. Perfect, says I. We couldn't want more. Bird poop took my room shingles off, that's for sure. Yes, Dave, my son, it's pretty strong stuff. Turn your seatbelt sign on. It's going to get rough. So we started on down with the tour on the nose. Sheave to the starboard. 2 points, I suppose. Now back to the larboard. 3 points or so, eh? We're just about over Balleen, I would say. Then the turbulence struck and we started to bounce. We started to shake and to rattle and jounce. Hang on to her, Davy, said the tour with a roar, and bring her 2 points to the starboard once more. The tour used one wing to shield his sight from the cold and the snow on the dirty old night. Then all hands felt a bump that was different somehow. We're here, said the tour. You can shut her off now. Then the cheers all rang out from all over the plane. A bayman said he'd never tour hunt again. I said, thank you, my buddy. We all owe you one. Go on, said the tour. Sure, I found that good fun. Then he took off again because, as you know, there were other flights holding a dozen or so, and he guided them in on that dirty old night, and all hands was happy and merry and bright. Then he took off again and headed northeast for his home on the Funks and his own Christmas Eve. His youngsters still up, so he drove them to bed. Santa won't come if you're still up, he said. Then he sat with his missus for a nice cup of tea and told of his day, what had happened to he. She said, perhaps you should make it a seasonal job. Good stamps, I suppose, he said with a nod. So next time you figure your Christmas is shot because St. John's is flattered and pea in a pot and you're stuck on a flight going round in a hold, perhaps you'll get in with air traffic control.
Good story, Dave. We're going to take a short break now, and then we'll be right back with the St. John's Story Circle and stories on Rogers TV. Back with some more stories from the St. John's Story Circle on Rogers TV. Janine Walsh is going to tell us a story now. Janine is a writer, storyteller, photographer, woodworker, and she's presently studying puppetry arts. Janine.
Thank you, Randy. My story this evening is called The Man in the Mummer. It's a story I wrote, and it's about a local man and how he gains his courage. It's a story about Fred. Now, Fred is indeed a mummer, but he wasn't always a mummer. Fred was shy, and he lacked the courage that he thought his so-called normal friends had. He lived in the town, and he had a woodworking shop, and there he would just stay to himself, for the most part. But this time of year, during the Christmas season, he yearned to be one of those fearless mummers. He even prepared for the occasion. He had carved himself an ugly stick. But year after year, he would sit in the house and back out. He would watch the mummers as they went to and fro around the town, but he would sit in his house looking out the window and just whittling and carving his ugly stick. Well, sure, by now, he had made the most beautiful ugly stick you ever could imagine. Well, the season was upon us again. And that was it. He wasn't going to back down this time. So before he lost his gumption, he got ready. He put on his rubber boots. He put on his coveralls. He put on a piece of lace over his face that he had cut from a tablecloth. And he pulled a stocking cap down over to keep it on. He grabbed his beautiful ugly stick, and off he headed out the door. There he was. Now, what a night it was. A picture-perfect mummer's postcard night. A clear night, full moon. The light was just dancing on the ocean in this coastal town that he lived in. There was Christmas lights and Christmas music playing in the background. Well, he looked around He could see there was 3 mummers there and 2 mummers there, and there was more down below. But how would he pull this off? It was only him. Well, with that, a group of 3 mummers put up their hand. "Hey, Tom, is that you?" Well, without batting an eye, Fred put up his hand and he joined in with the mummers. So now Fred was Tom. And off they went, house to house. They sang, they played, they danced. It was a wonderful time. Well, the night was getting late, but there was one house left to go to. Old Mrs. Wales. She lived down on the edge of town in a big 2-story greenhouse. It was the one across from the big church, the one that was lit up all during Christmas. You went in her house, and the heat from the wood stove just hit you. She gave you homemade bread and butter and dark fruit cake with the taste of rum that could burn your lips. It was a great time. It was the best time. But now it had gotten very late. It was time to go. So off they headed. One by one, they departed. And as they went up the hill, all the mummers in their own good time went off to their homes until there was no one left on the top of the hill but Fred. Now you may think Fred is probably upset that the night has come to an end, but no, he wasn't. He had this smile on his face and his heart was full because he learned a valuable lesson that night. It wasn't the man in the mummer. It was the mummer inside the man. Because you see, there's a mummer in all of us. And he knew that in one short year, that he once again would fearlessly go out with the mummers. And he would feel, well, just a little bit more normal than he ever did before. Well, at least as normal as a mummer.
Good job, Janine. Good job. Okay, we're going to be right back now with a few more Christmas stories from the St. John Story Circle. And we're back on Rogers TV with the St. John's Story Circle telling some Christmas stories. Bill Coltis is with us tonight, and Bill is going to tell us one of his stories. Bill has spent 15 years on the water as a sailor, trawlerman, fishery observer. Then he spent 20 years as an independent film producer, and he's a published author. His book, Revenge Finds a Home, is published by Flanker Press. Bill?
Thanks, Randy. My Newfoundland Christmas story is based on a family that comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, this requires a little bit of explanation, but many years ago, my wife Frances and I were invited to join a group whose job, main focus, and mission was to help families who immigrate to Newfoundland to make the transition easier. And so there was a connection made to a family who were in a refugee camp. They were in a refugee camp because the country had gone through a civil war, and unfortunately the parents of this family were killed. And so the responsibility of raising the family rested on a 21-year-old young woman. She had a younger brother, Banzi, another brother, Delphin, and she had her own child who was about 3 or 4 years old. His name is Passion. So they made an application to emigrate to Canada. They ended up coming to Newfoundland. And finally, the day happened. They arrived at the airport, and so the work began. And I often wonder myself personally, my God, I said, what do these immigrants go through? I often think, well, what about if I had to haul up stakes
and go to China. I'm in the middle of China, and I got to learn the language and learn the customs. I don't know, it's pretty daunting to me. That's the rewarding thing about being a part of a support group. And so they had to learn the language, they had to learn the banking system, they had to learn how to go to the grocery shop and pick out this and pay for that. And the bus routes, and of course, Rosette, she had to take the kids in school, get them dressed and get them adjusted to that. So it was all pretty daunting to me. When I look back at it too, I was quite amazed at how well they adjusted. You know, I don't think I would have been able to do that. I should say too that a cornerstone of this whole process is they had a very strong Christian belief in their faith. And the connection was felt over on this side too, and the people who were involved with this whole process, they had a strong Christian faith. Now, on a personal note, our family, we owned a 2-room schoolhouse up in Torres Grove on the southern shore, and every year we had a Christmas tree cutting party. It was a great bit of fun. All friends and relations used to come up, and certainly the African family came up this time. We'd have one room put aside, and all the kids would go out there, and some of the adults would go out there too, and help them make Christmas decorations, wrap some presents. And the adults were in the other room talking to each other and whatever. And of course they were dipping into moose stew and pea soup and cocoa. At any rate, somewhere along the line, someone said, okay, time to go and get our tree. So jumped in trucks, jumped in cars, drove out to the nearby woods, and off we went. And I was kind of watching the African crowd. I mean, they were getting a real chuckle out of all this, you know. And they got into the spirit of it, and someone would say, oh, geez, that's a nice tree over there. You know, cut that one down. Let's have a look at it. You know, well, there's another one over there. Let's have a look at that one, you know. So they're getting into it. The African family had an apartment in St. John's on Carter's Hill, so they wanted their tree. Now, young Passion, who was 3 or 4 years old, he was watching. He never said anything, really. But he got it in his head, I want my own Christmas tree. Thank you very much. And so that's what he did. He went off with his mentor, picked out a little tree, they cut the tree. Thankfully that day, someone had a camera and took a picture of Passion, proudly showing his little 2-foot-high Christmas tree. And I should say too that our oldest daughter, she's a very, very good painter, and she took the photograph and she did a painting of it. And there's a painting of Passion in his red snowsuit and big smile and holding up his Christmas tree. And it's a tradition in our personal family that we take the painting out and put it up on the wall right next to our own evergreen tree. And it just reminds us the real, true meaning of Christmas. So there's my story. Merry Christmas.
Oh, very good. Nice, touching immigrant story, Christmas story, Bill. We're going to take a break now, and then we'll be right back with some more Christmas stories from the St. John's Storytelling and Rogers TV. Telling stories on Rogers TV with the St. John's Story Circle. Harry Ingram is going to tell us a Christmas story now. Harry's a writer and a storyteller. He's a published author with his book, Don't Be Talking. And Harry writes and performs his own original material. Harry?
Thanks, Randy. Yeah, my story, I guess, is it's just a bit of foolishness more than anything. My daughter asked me to come up with a recitation surrounding the North Pole. And I said, sure, why not? So this is a little something I wrote a few years ago. It's called Havoc at the North Pole. Early October up at the North Pole, months of preparing had taken its toll. The oldest of the bunch were both tuckered out. Yes, Donner and Blitzen I'm talking about. All tired out from years of hard work, both getting older, joints starting to hurt. So at the annual meeting, they develop a plan for when Santa gets back from Newfoundland. Yes, he's gone for a visit. He'll be back before long. Perhaps get a moose if hunting season's on. Time quickly passed and the CEO returned. He was there to address all their cares and concerns. Well, the elves turned up and the reindeer too. Mrs. Claus laid out food for the whole entire crew. They talked about training and their level of fitness and maximising the gift distribution business. They addressed global warming and weather conditions and the reindeer's diet to cut back on emissions. Then Donner spoke up and said me and Blitzen are both nearing the age of senior citizens. Then Blitzen spoke up after finishing some cabbage and suggested an early retirement package. Well, all hands went mad, things started to unravel. Santa shouted for orders, he banged his gavel. But they didn't listen, they all had their gripes and all started talking with no end in sight. Dasher spoke up and talked of bad dreams and how Santa turned angry and downright mean. So it's the fear of Santa, you might say, or claustrophobia, it's also known as. Then Comet interrupted and proceeded to tell us that after grazing on tinsel, he now has tinselitis. And then there was Rudolph, leader of the pack, said his nose was fading, so it's almost gone black. And with the elves overworked, well, they had their say too. We want recognition for all that we do, an increase in wages and fringe benefits, or we all go on strike. Conditions are not fit. Calm down now, boys, St. Nick yelled for order. We'll call in a mediator. Yes, I will inform her. It's only to call, and I know she'll be here. You might know her. It's Olive, the other reindeer. To help with these issues, she quickly agreed, and after debriefing, she was now up to speed. She took Santa and Rudolph, and behind closed doors, a private meeting was held for 3 hours or more. They emerged from the room, all wearing big smiles, a new reindeer contract they held up with pride. To fix all your issues was a challenge, said Olive, but I'm sure you'll be happy, and that I can promise. Now, the first thing addressed was Dasher's bad dreams. She said, I know it sounds scary, but to me it just seems like you need visions of sugar plums dancing in your head, so she gave him a book to read just before bed. 'Twas the night before Christmas. She read it out loud, and soon Dasher was sleeping, not making a sound. And for Comet's ailing throat, no need for physicians. These candy canes are magic. They'll restore mint condition. And since he couldn't tell a green tree from Blasty, an operation for Rudolph, yes, rhinoplasty. Then she turned her attention to the elves and their crew. For extra time worked, they get time off in lieu. An increase in wages, is that what you say? Free candy on Sunday, plus $2 a day. Now with that figured out, the last thing on the list was Donner and Blitzen and how they'd be missed. All agreed they couldn't quit, couldn't go anywhere. They were part of a team and they have been for years. To help this issue, well, Santa had a plan. See about a used motor from an old 12 Elan. It wasn't Newfoundland on the last trip he made. He bought it outright from a fella named Dave. That would power the sleigh through the rain, sleet and snow. With the reindeer relaxing, they'd be there just for show. Well, all hands started cheering and shouting hooray. They couldn't wait for Christmas in the new powered sleigh. They thanked Olive for her service and they went back to work. They were all excited for their new gifts and perks. Everything is all right now, their problems all cleared, and they really hoped they wouldn't need Olive next year. So she galloped and galloped till her legs soon took flight. Merry Christmas, everyone, and to everyone, good night. Thanks.
Good one, Harry. That's a good one. I wrote this piece to try and show how much differently men and women look at Christmas. And it's one old man's take on just how differently him and his wife look at Christmas. And I've called it an original title, The Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas. Well, perhaps the night before that. Myself and the wife got in the dirty big spat. I said, there's no Santa Claus. She said, I'll allow. And that's when it started, the dirty big row. Well, who brought me that dolly when I was 7, she said, when the night Mother made Santa's cookies with them drawers on her head. And then I had the picture of the mother-in-law without any drawers. I can tell you, boys, I still got the scars. I said, it's all about money now. 2 or 3 visas maxed out, and the bill's coming in January like a smack in the mouth. 'Tis the season, she said. Don't be such an old grouch. Stop scratching your ass and get up off that couch. Well, that brought me to me pins, there's no doubt about that. Not a chance in the world of a long winter's nap. And then she started in about Christmas. Never come up for air. Even had me wishing St. Nicholas soon would be there. She said it's the time for family, They'll come over and schmooze. Last year, her uncle ate Santa's cookies and he drank all her booze. And the snow falling so lightly, and on the fire a log. And Roger's cable with a forecast of rain, drizzle, and fog. And the decorations and the tree, and oh, Santa's jolly red hat. Stuff I puts under the category of all that old crap. Now she wants the house all lit up, so you can see it from space, and the light and power boys working overtime just to try and keep pace. And the lawn covered in reindeer lined up ass to snout, and a whole bunch of Santas, pipes in, bellies out. So I sized up one old bush about a foot off the ground, and I threw out one set of lights. Is that all you found? There's 25 more sets somewhere. That should be lots. I spent Christmas Eve in the basement, untangling the gnats. But she was on a roll, boys, was she ever psyched. She had a brand spanking new visa that had yet to be swiped. We can pay it off over time, I heard her gloriously shout. And sure, if you dies before that, I'll get the balance paid out. But now I got to admit, there's something to all that old crap. There's families and memories amongst all the flap. And when I saw her standing there underneath the mistletoe, I gave her the big Christmas smooch. Well, you knows now, you knows. Because she got me convinced how things should pan out as a wife. She's quite the believer. So now me, I still got me doubts. So thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in to the St. John's Storytelling Circle. Thank you very much to Hayward's for this beautiful venue and setting for our Christmas stories. Thank you to Rogers TV for inviting us in. And Merry Christmas to everybody. If you get a chance, drop down to the Battery Cafe the second Wednesday of any month. We have our story circle. You can come and listen to a story, or you can actually come up and tell your own story. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Provide feedback on this show or find out how you can get involved.